Hey everybody, today we're going to take a second look at another state for 2024 and see which way it might be trending. Today it's going to be the state with the third closest margin last time, and that's going to be the key Rust Belt state of Wisconsin. And this map shows you the presidential shifts between 2016 and 2020. There's a lot more blue on this map, and Wisconsin is not really an exception. There's a little bit of red scattered in, but it's clear that most places did shift toward the left. So the state has gone back and forth in the past two elections. It's expected to be up for grabs yet again this time. But before we look ahead, let's take a few minutes to get a little bit of background on the Badger State. So in Wisconsin, we're looking at an even 10 electoral votes. And in the last election, it was narrow, under a 1% margin for Biden. But in 16, it was a similar margin, yet it went in the other direction toward Trump. The big difference between 16 and 20 is there was a lot less third-party vote. You can see the line in the middle has shrunk a lot. And with less third-party vote in 2020, both Biden and Trump went up. Trump topped out at 48.8, but Biden eclipsed 49.5. So nobody's gotten to 50% of the vote since 2012. Back then, Obama won the state comfortably, not as much as 2008, where he won it by double digits. Then in the George W. Bush elections, it was also very close, under a half a point in both of those, but they did go toward the Democrat. Before that, Clinton won the state relatively comfortably, and even in 1988, Michael Dukakis carried the state over George H.W. Bush. Before Trump winning it in 16, it last went red in 1984 for Reagan's landslide re-election. He also carried it the first time in 80, but then it was won by Jimmy Carter in 1976. So only 3 wins for the Republicans out of the past 12. There have been some very narrow elections, 4 of them under 1%, but for the most part, Democrats have been favored. Now let's look closer at the last election. So here we've got Biden at 49.45, Trump at 48.82. That's about a 20 to 21,000 vote advantage. As I said, third-party vote has declined this time. Joe Jorgensen had the most at just over 1%. Now if we go down here and glance at the county map, you can familiarize yourself with some of the notable cities. They've got everything from the major cities of Milwaukee and the state capital of Madison, to Eau Claire in the northwest, Oshkosh, and then Green Bay in the northeast, and then Kenosha in the southeast. Now if we go down to the list of counties and sort by the total number of votes cast, you can see that in the top 2, Milwaukee and Dane, Biden won them massively, both of them over 40-point margins. So it's going to be tough to make up that kind of vote if you're a Republican statewide, given that 2 counties are so overwhelmingly in one direction. But in the next 7 medium to suburban counties, Trump won all of those. However, in 6 out of 7 of them, he lost ground compared to 2016. Now, if you scroll down to the lower population counties, you'll see that Biden did win a few of them, usually by single digits. But this is a state where Trump tends to dominate the rural vote. He easily wins many of these by double digits, many of them by 20 or 30-point margins. Now, if we want to look at some of the shifts in some of these counties, we can get on Ballotpedia. Now, this time, the shading does not indicate the margins. That just shows you how often they voted for the Democrat or the Republican in the past 3 presidential elections. Now, let's start in the most populous county of Milwaukee. Now, it still has the most people, but it has declined in population over the decades. And in 2020, Biden won it easily by about 40. And Biden's total was more than Hillary got in 16, as well as more than Obama in 2012. On the other side, Trump was between what Mitt Romney got in 12 and what he got his first time at 16. But again, with less third-party vote in 20 compared to 16, Trump only went up 0.7 of a point, while Biden went up about 4.5. The second most populous county with the state capital is Dane. This county is even bluer. It's higher educated with a large college town, and Trump was on par with what he got in 16. But at the other side, Biden went up over 5 points, and that's about a 53-point gap for Biden. So with the 2 bluest counties getting even bluer, Trump would have had to make up some ground in other places. But if you go to the most populous county that Trump was able to win, next to Milwaukee, it's Waukesha County. And this is a long-standing suburban Republican stronghold. But if you go back to 2012, Mitt Romney was at about 67. Then in 16, Trump cut it way down to about 60. Then in the last election, he still sank about 0.4. Meanwhile, Hillary did about 1 point better than Obama. Then Biden improved further by about 5 points. So in this county with a lot of red vote, the margin has narrowed yet again. Now Waukesha, with the other 2 counties surrounding Milwaukee, are usually referred to as the WOW counties. North of Milwaukee, you have Ozaukee, and that's another one that you can see clearly has shifted toward the left. Trump doing over 9 points worse than Romney in 12. And on the other side, Biden pretty much making up that deficit. And the other W in the WOW counties is Washington. This is also one that got a little bit more narrow, but Trump did improve on his total last time by 1 point. The problem for him is Biden went up more. He went up 3 points. And the most populous county that Trump was able to improve on is all the way in the southeast in Kenosha. There was a lot of unrest in this county in 2020, and between the last 2 elections, Trump went up 3.5, and that actually clearly outpaces Biden this time, where he went up only about a little over 0.5 point. So that's one bright spot for Trump, but most of the other places with notable population went in the other direction. direction. Now, one other county we can take a look at here is going to be where Green Bay is. That's Brown County. That one went to Romney narrowly in 2012. Then in 16, Trump did very well. He won it by over 10 points. But in 2020, there was a regression. Again, both went up, but Biden went up a lot more, and Trump's margin narrowed to about 7. Now, obviously, we cannot go over every county, but another thing to mention that's notable about this state is what's referred to as the driftless area. That's going to be this western and southwestern region. Now, you can see a lot of these counties are shaded light red. That means Obama actually won all of these back in 2012, but after that, Trump was able to win them both times. So if you hover over some of these and take a look at the margins, some of them Obama won easily by double digits, but they lurched extremely hard toward the right when Trump came onto the scene. And now he's winning most of these himself by double digits, including in 2020 where he expanded his margin a little bit. So it's this part of the state that has some potentially favorable demographics for Trump. Lower population, white working class voters, those are the kinds that were on the side of Obama, but they did move toward Trump over the past decade. And if the trends continue here at all, and if the enthusiasm and turnout is there for Trump, that could be what it takes for him to offset some of the losses we saw in Dane and Milwaukee counties. As always, the suburbs are going to be up for debate, so there's a stark divide here between education as well as urban and rural. Theoretically, all Harris has to do is run it up in those blue areas and she should be able to hold the state, but there could be some areas on the map here that Trump has room to expand. Now let's switch over to this map here, and this again is the 2020 presidential results. And this will show you the vote all the way down to a precinct level, and you can see most of the state is red. Outside of the major cities we already took a look at, there's a few other spots of blue in the north and the west. So all of this adds up to pretty much a 50-50 state. Now one other thing we can do is click right here. This will show you the shifts between 16 and 20. Then this paints a different picture. We see a lot of red, but we also see a lot of blue. So if we zoom in on the southeastern part of the state, we can actually see in Milwaukee itself, some of these precincts actually did shift toward Trump, some of them even by double digits. This is a pattern we've seen in other states where in the deep blue cities themselves, parts of them did get a little bit redder. Now, of course, overall, the city itself is still going overwhelmingly for Biden, but in a close election, every little bit can tip the state one way or the other. But the other familiar pattern we've seen in other states is going to be in the suburbs, and this is no exception. Most of these precincts did shift toward Biden, a bunch of them also by double digits. Now, in this state, the suburbs are still mostly very red, but all that red vote is clearly getting a little bit less red. So if these trends continue for Harris, that would be a great sign for her, and that could outweigh any potential losses deep in Milwaukee itself. So feel free to look at the rest of this map if you'd like, but let's take a look at it another way. On this map here with the red and the blue arrows, these are again the shifts between 16 and 20. The blue arrows move toward Biden, the red arrows move toward Trump. The bigger the arrow, the bigger the shift. And there's a clear mix of red and blue on here. Now we can also click on any one of these counties for a more detailed breakdown. Now if there's anything resembling a bellwether, it might be in the northeast here in Door County. This voted for Obama, then narrowly for Trump, then narrowly for Biden. Now you can see between 16 and 20, both Biden and Trump gained votes, but Biden gained a little bit more. He was over 2,000 while Trump was over 1,100. And keep in mind, the reduction in third-party vote was down over 2/3, a raw 4.1% reduction down to just 1.6. And throughout all those shifts, Biden went up 4.3 while Trump declined 0.3%. So you could do the same thing for any one of the other counties. Now, one of the big things that might be a factor in this state are going to be the shifts among specific demographic groups. So here's the 2020 exit polling specific to Wisconsin. You can see that Trump won men by 8 points, 53-45, but Biden won women by 7, 53-46. With the age breakdown, Biden won voters under age 45 while Trump carried those over 45. And then with education, high school or less, Trump carried those voters 53-46. And then at the other end, Biden easily carried postgraduates 66-33. Now in a close state, a 1-point shift among any of these groups could matter. But one of the big demographics we usually hear about for this state is going to be white non-college educated men. Here they supported Trump by 18, 58-40. And nationally, Trump won that group with about 70%, so that could be an area he could make some gains. On the other side, white college-educated women. Here they voted for Biden 63-36, but nationally, last time they supported Biden with about 54%. So every state is going to be different, but those are the kinds of margins that Trump and Harris are going to have to hold if they want to remain competitive in this state. If either one of them can make a 1-point gain among those demographics, that should be enough to flip the state if everything happened the same as it did last time. There are far from guarantees that everything is going to be the same. game. So you can look at the rest of the demographics if you'd like, but the voter enthusiasm or the turnout is going to be another factor as to who could win this state. So here's the turnout in the last 3 federal elections. And in Wisconsin in 2018, the turnout was 61.4. Then in 2020, it spiked to 75. Then in 2022, it sank back down to under 2018, and it was at 60%. My guess is the turnout is going to be somewhere between 18 and 20. But of course, whichever side is more enthusiastic, that could provide the boost to be able to carry the state. So it's a very even state. There are elected statewide Democrats as well as Republicans. And if you want a taste of how split the state is, we can go back to the last midterms. In the U.S. Senate election, Republican Ron Johnson won re-election by about 1 point. He cleared 50% in a two-way race. And at that time, that was after the Supreme Court ruling on abortion. It seemed like Democrats were fired up, and Ron Johnson did not have favorable ratings, and he was polarizing. But he did go on to win re-election. So the county map here might give you a little bit of an idea of what the margins would be for a Republican to be able to win. But in that very same election, Democrats were able to carry the governor's mansion. Tony Evers won re-election by over 3 points. He was over 51%. So that goes to show you what the Democrats are capable of in the exact same election. And this county map here is just a little bit bluer than the previous one. So both parties having success here really makes it difficult to predict who's going to win. But the last thing we could do is get back on Wikipedia and take a look at how accurate the polling was in 2020. So again, we had Biden win the state by about 0.6. However, the aggregate polling was way off. It had Biden winning the state by over 8. Real Clear Politics had it down to 6.7. 270 to win had it all the way at 9.2. So this is some familiar atrocious polling in a key state. The result was correct, but when you're off by 6, 7, maybe even 8 points, it's going to be really tough for people to trust the polling. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be off this time, or it could be off in the opposite direction as well. But there's no way this is going to instill much confidence in the electorate. Now, nearly every poll had Biden ahead leading up to the election, and even going back into September, it looked like Biden was going to win the state comfortably. So with all that said, which way will Wisconsin trend? Well, we've seen yet another polarized state. Both parties are capable of winning a statewide race here, even in the exact same election, also after the Supreme Court abortion decision. So it makes it extremely difficult to make any real prediction. Democrats did flip the ideological control of the state Supreme Court in the spring. That is a big boon for them, but it's almost a 50-50 state on paper, and it might turn into a ground game on who could get the most turnout. As for the specific trends and the potential areas of expansion, we saw for Harris, the suburbs, that's going to be her best bet. She also could theoretically make more gains in those rural red counties. On the Trump side, he could make some small gains in the cities themselves, but his best bet is going to be to stop any bleeding in the suburbs and expand his margins in those red rural counties in the driftless area. Some of them are light red or even light blue still. He's going to need to get those margins up if he wants to win. It's anybody's guess as to which way it's going to go. It would seem like if it's going to get any redder, that's probably enough for it to flip, but it could go in the other direction. It could go to Harris by 3 or 4 points. The polling in the last couple presidential elections here has been absolutely rock bottom. So if Trump is ever trailing here, it's going to be easy for Republicans to point to the last 2 elections. But as I said, Democrats can point to that state Supreme Court election. They could point to the suburbs and their own enthusiasm. Everybody's got something they can focus on, and they're all pretty much just hoping for the best. Maybe everything cancels each other out. So it's expected to be a nail-biter and a serious battleground for this election. There's plenty of data out there for both sides to be excited about as well as concerned. So that's it for another look here at Wisconsin. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about this state? Which way do you think it's going to trend? Is the Trump brand so toxic that Harris is going to win the state? Or is there a hidden Trump vote out there again that's not captured by the polling and Trump is going to carry the state again? Which demographics, which areas of the state, and which counties are you taking a look at the most? Let me know down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to help support the channel. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.